Hi, welcome, or welcome back. I know you've been holding your breath all week waiting for the next video, especially you, Mum.
Yeah. If you just happen to stumble on again and you didn't catch our first introduction video to this channel, then we'll link it for you down below. But I roped Chanel's in for another sit down with me because I did begin filming and then I just thought, nope, I need some propping up for this one. I was going to sit here with my cat as moral support, but Chanel's thought it might translate a bit weird on screen, me sitting with my cat stroking on the lap.
Like evil Dr. Claw, you know, from Inspector Gadget. Wouldn't work very well.
Next time. But till then, Chanel has graciously decided to fill in for us. So he'll probably give me some encouraging side hugs as we go along, I'm sure.
Yeah. So we mentioned in the previous video that Jam's recently diagnosed with PTSD. And since then, actually quite a while before, we've been trying to scale back our lives a bit, trying to slower the pace a little bit to try and cope with some of the stresses and the added pressures as much as possible. And some of the changes that we spoke about last week included taking a sabbatical, a 1-year sabbatical from our roles at church, which I'm a pastor, and in doing so we hope that allows us more time to redirect energy and that time to give Jan an opportunity to heal and recover.
Yeah, and so in this video I wanted to share my recount of what sort of happened and led us to this place, and Chanel's will, most likely mop me up off the floor once we're done.
Yeah, mop myself up a little bit too. And I'll give a little bit of my own perspective as well. There's plenty of background information we could go into, but for time's sake, I think we're going to try and focus in on the specific event, and maybe fill in some more details later in the video or maybe in videos to come.
Yeah, but apologies if this video runs a bit long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll start.
Yeah.
About 18 months ago, our daughter AJ fell really ill and with pneumonia, and it was actually a horrid few weeks actually, because all of the kids were sick at that stage, and Chanel's was already in the hospital with Gabriel, who had pneumonia himself and battling 2 chest infections of his own, and so I was at home caring for our other 4. So it was a chaotic time of back and forth to doctors, and AJ was really sick. She just wasn't improving, and we had been banging our heads with doctors and hospital staff, just trying to get them to, or anyone, to be as concerned as we were at that point. Our youngest 3 children were born premature, and so it's not uncommon for them to be ill. They have struggled since birth with respiratory issues, and so I suppose by this point I had become fairly accustomed to looking after them and dealing with their different vulnerabilities to sicknesses, and I also became more confident in being able to identify when things weren't right, and in this case AJ, I knew something was being missed and went overlooked, and it was an incredibly frustrating and stressful time to allow due process to take place, and the tension was really building within me. I was running on empty, no sleep, as we were constantly being told to just keep her hydrated and get some rest, and she'll come good in a few days, it's flu season. And a moment in this story that's been really hard for me as a mum to try to release and extend grace and forgiveness to myself is that I was in the hospital triage for about 3 hours before deciding to take her home and try again later. She was really lethargic and exhausted, but she seemed settled enough that even though it was against my better judgment, I thought, perhaps another night of rest will do her well. And I don't know if there's other mums, you'd be able to relate to this dilemma, but just sometimes you make these decisions, and I brought her home early in the morning and I put her down to sleep on a bassinet, which is a moment I'm really grateful for, because her bed is fitted with a motion sensor pad. If you don't know what that is, it's a device you put underneath your baby's mattress and it detects movement, so it's really sensitive, and so if your baby stops breathing, it alarms at you. And I'm grateful to God that I had the clarity of mind to place her in her bassinet, because I could have easily have put her on the bed or propped her up elsewhere, but I wouldn't have been as attentive to her. And I went downstairs to check on our other three. But what I didn't realise at this point was that her infection had gotten so bad that within the next hour, her right lung eventually collapsed, and she was so tired that she stopped breathing. So her monitor was alarming, which is a terrifying sound. I can still hear it ringing in my ears today. I remember flying upstairs and scooping her up in my arms, and her body was just completely limp. She had no tension at all. She was this awful shade of pale green colour, and her lips were blue, and her eyes were just like stone. And I thought in that instant, that moment, we had lost her. And somehow I managed to get my legs moving, and I don't know how I managed to get down the stairs, because I was so hysterical. My poor son, who witnessed everything, I was screaming at him to call an ambulance while I was frantically trying to recall everything that we had learned in the resus training. And I laid her down flat on the floor and was just breathing into her little mouth and nose, and it's just like shaking, like trying to find the right place on her chest to be able to start compressions. And in my panic, I was getting it completely wrong, but I knew that doing something was better than doing nothing at all. But she was completely unresponsive. But by the time the ambulance arrived, which felt like forever, but it was probably only just a few minutes, and AJ had started to let out these little groans, which was a relief. But by the time she was en route to the hospital, she was no longer able to breathe without support. So, but because I still had our other three at home with us, I couldn't ride with her. I had to wait behind until Mum came to stay with the kids, so they weren't there alone. But and when I arrived, it was chaotic. It was AJ was originally taken to our local hospital, and they aren't equipped to deal with critical cases, and so she needed to be transferred really quickly. But it took Nets hours to try to stabilise her for transport, and she was moved to Randwick Children's ICU, and that's where she spent the next month in both the ICU and the children's ward, recovering. And it was the scariest moment of my life. Yeah.
And I guess for me, just in the midst of that there, I was at the hospital with Gabriel, who was there with a double infection, double pneumonia. And so I got a call off Jan to say that AJ was coming in the hospital, but the only thing she said is that she had to resus her and she's coming as quick as she can. I didn't know what was going on. And they brought her into the bay, and the one thing I distinctly remember is them having every now and then, not every now and then, I feel like every 20 seconds, if that, just to stimulate her, just to tap at her to try and get her to start breathing again. And so it was very difficult in the midst of that moment, and I could see that it was difficult for Jan. But in the weeks and months to come, I would try and ask Jan what had happened that led to that moment, and what happened around that, and she couldn't tell me. She'd always give me that look of not now, talk about it now. And so in the initial, we did the best we could. We didn't have the opportunity to stop and care for ourselves properly in the midst of that, because we were responsible in that moment, responsible to our family, to the kids, to church and life. And so instead of slowing the pace down, we continued on, and I think that became as a cost to you, to Jan, and to us. And I wonder if we had been proactive in the beginning, whether it would have led to this point or not, and reached that same intensity. But we prioritised the kids, and we looked at trying to get them better, and in the months to come, they came good via the prayers and the support of our church family and our families, and also the doctors and the nurses. They were able to recover, both AJ and Gabe. But for Jan, as time went on, as things began to settle down around the kids and around home, it was then I started to really notice the struggle for her, and her emotional changes in particular were most difficult to navigate. I think as far as her trying to self-preservate and to cope, she became more withdrawn within herself. She lost that mental flexibility, that ability to bounce back from situations that she normally would be able to. She couldn't process life, and the things that were normal stresses, they really just began to overwhelm and be too much. She wasn't able to self-regulate in the same way that she used to. She's very calm, composed, measured in nature. So it's been really hard to see that effect, that change in her whole personality, if you like, and the effect that it's had. And it's made worse, I think, by the physical changes that's happened. This is insomnia and increased migraines and other physical effects that have happened as well. So it's been really complicated from my perspective, and to know how to navigate this and how best to support Jan and what she really needs from me.
Yeah, it has been complicated. It's a bit like a mental minefield, really. So it every step we took felt like a risk. Me taking steps to try to regain some mental resilience and create new emotional boundaries and accept my new current sort of limitations, and not pushing too hard as well. And then Shanna's needing to learn and understand how to support me. Both sides were really difficult. And if you're in a similar place to us, or know of others who've experienced this type of struggling, which sadly really wouldn't be that difficult, because my story is not uncommon. It's relevant for a lot of people. So,
yeah, and I suppose which brings back to one of the main reasons as to why we've chosen to share this openly, because we do witness it every day in our role in the church and in the community. People's lives, they live hard lives. There's dealing with big losses, grief, abuse, depression. Unfortunately, people get met with a misunderstanding and judgment surrounding these types of issues.
Yeah, I mean, suffering in general, I think, even within the church, like it's a failure of someone's character or faith to feel things or to be hurt by things, which is not true. It's not a justification to stay obviously in that place, but shaming those who suffer is a poor approach.
Yeah, I think it was that line from Bruce Almighty that reminds you of, isn't it, where he says, "Oh, but the worst day of my life with a side order of guilt, please," This reminds us of that a little bit. So again, throughout all this channel is meant to encourage others to find a community, to find people who are support to you, that you can share your life with, to encourage you and to support you. Maybe it's those who have struggled with some of the similar things that you struggle with. Maybe it's someone who's a bit further along the journey that can maybe be a mentor of some sort for you as well. People you admire as well. But engage us, whether it's commenting publicly here or emailing us or contacting us privately. We'd love to encourage and we'd love to know how we can pray for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just before we wrap up, because if you've made it this far, then well done. But as for our community of people, we are fortunate to be so well supported by church and our friends and our family, but I am also getting the help of a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and they've been able to offer a lot of insight and wisdom around the impact of trauma and the different therapy treatments that are available. But if you choose to subscribe and follow along with us on our journey, you'll come to know that fundamentally our approach in all things, not just in recovery, but it's in all things, is deeply based in God's grace and filtered through biblical truth and teaching. And so,
And so we continue to navigate this season. We hope that it shines some light on your own as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And thanks again for joining us, guys. Thank you all for your support. Next week, Shannels will be uploading his daily beauty routine. Yeah. I mean, showers are optional with that.
But
no, I honestly don't know what is up next. But
it'll be a cliffhanger.
Yeah. So, build the suspense. It's the magic of movie making at its finest.
So hold on to your seats. We'll see where we go to next.
Thanks again, guys. Bless you.
Cool. Just before we go, we wanted to introduce you to someone really special.
Yeah. Hey, Sunshine.
Nice dear.
Say hello.
Say hi.
Hey.
Look up there. So wave to everybody.
Hey, gorgeous. So thanks again, guys, for joining us, and really appreciate your stuff.